around my story.
I am addicted to food. I suffer a lot. I need help. I've tried to give up, but I fail every time. Hamburgers. Who can give up eating hamburgers, especially with barbecue sauce? I didn't mind this kind of addiction, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me begin by introducing myself. I am Patricia, 15 years old, living with my parents and my brother. I lead a quiet life. No interests, no hobbies, except for eating, that is. Food is my faithful friend. It never leaves me. It is my partner, my soulmate. But having food as your soulmate has insidious side effects. A dark side, if you will. It denies me a healthy life, robs me of the energy to play, and causes me to sleep excessively. I would much rather stay at home with a bag of potato chips than go out and exercise. My soulmate ultimately betrayed me, though, last Thanksgiving at my granny's home. She lives in a state nearby. Granny was a clever doctor and an excellent cook at that. She could conjure up something really delicious. On that day, she had prepared barbecue turkey with nuts and other secret recipe ingredients. The taste was so great, as if it had descended from heaven itself. I felt like I was fighting a food war, and I had to win at all costs. I ate and ate and ate. I don't know why, but I just couldn't control myself. I attacked that turkey like it was the last on the planet. But every culinary war with a worthy adversary, such as the barbecued turkey, has its own unique type of casualties. Suddenly, I found myself unable to breathe. I fell to my knees and passed out. The turkey had won. I woke up later in the hospital, though, still clinging to an unfinished turkey leg. The doctor told me that I was gaining way too much weight. He said that I should be put on a diet. Diet? Man, how I hated that word. It hung over my head like the sword of Damocles. It meant depriving me of my passion, my reason for living. I considered eating vegetables in small amounts to be the worst form of cruel and unusual punishment, the worst form of torture imaginable. Imagine thinking of a wonderful, greasy, cheese-laden pizza with all the toppings, and then suddenly opening your eyes to find a healthy green salad bowl. But I had reached a turning point in life. One day, my brother was playing on the street, while I was sitting at home gazing longingly at a tempting piece of cheesecake, just sitting there, taunting, daring me to eat it. I struggled mightily to resist the urge, but in the end I succumbed and wolfed it down like a starving animal. Shortly afterwards, I began feeling dizzy, but I was unable to call for help this time, and then I passed out again. I was taken to the hospital. While lying in the hospital bed, half conscious, I overheard the doctor say to someone, "She needs to stop eating or it will be the death of her." I thought to myself, whoa, death? So I made up my mind right then, right there. I resolved to fight a new war, a war against my appetite. On our way back home, I told my father that I wanted to see a nutritionist. He was delighted to hear that. Later, at the clinic, the doctor welcomed us in. She told me how to overcome my eating fetish. She gave me a strict diet regimen with a schedule full of healthy meals. I kept telling myself that winning this war was possible. I simply had to be patient and persevere. I stuck to the strict diet and did some physical workouts. My parents supported me wholeheartedly. I was enthusiastic. I can totally do this. A week passed quickly, and I eagerly visited the doctor to receive some good news. When the doctor weighed me and told me that my weight hadn't changed at all, I was crestfallen. She looked at me and asked me, how was this possible? I told her I didn't know, because I was following her diet thoroughly, though it did require a tremendous effort on my part. Another week passed, and again I went to the doctor. The results were the same. She said to me, "Patricia, are you sure you're following the diet I prescribed for you?" I said yes. She sat there wondering. Then she told me with a puzzled look on her face, "It's odd, but your weight is increasing, not decreasing." This unexpected piece of news mystified me. Another week passed. No change. The doctor was nonplussed. I returned home with a dejected look on my face. My father asked me what was wrong. And when I told him, he laughed. Do you believe that? My father actually laughed at my predicament. I was furious. He gestured an apology with his hand and then told me that it was my own fault. I was puzzled. What are you talking about? He told me that I had been sleepwalking to the refrigerator every night, and eating everything in sight. I was taken aback. I couldn't believe it. Stop acting like you didn't know it, he said. You must have been awake. I replied, No, father, I'm not acting. I was truly unaware that I've been sleepwalking and eating in my sleep. But now that we've finally solved the mystery of the increasing weight, we returned to the doctor with this new information and told her the situation. She laughed and told me that my discipline had denied my body the food it craved, but my brain had refused to cooperate and had overridden my will by urging me to eat in a subconscious state. She told me not to worry, though, that she could treat that. Armed with this knowledge and her support, and the support of my family, I felt that I could finally win this war.
I'm a musician. Not a terribly great one, but still, I consider myself a musician. I know my way around an instrument or two. More importantly, I'm a collector. I love collecting things, starting from coins to lottery tickets. There's no rhyme or reason to my collection. It consists of anything uniquely interesting I can get my hands on. That is why when I saw an ad on Craigslist for a vintage, rustic, red piano, I could not help but reach out to the seller. The ad's title seemed normal enough. It said, Old Piano, Rita Goodhome. It was nothing out of the ordinary, and not something that would normally grab my attention. Still, I felt a strange need to click on it. Perhaps I was bored, or maybe I just wanted to see what it looked like. Either way, I gave in to the temptation. There was no picture, just a story. It read something like this: I'm offering my piano to anyone who is willing to come and pick it up. It is very old, but still playable. I can prove this upon your arrival. It is red and has no brand markings. This is because it was made by my great-grandfather. It is one of a kind. He went out himself and chopped down a redwood tree to provide the material to build it. It took him many days to finally cut down the tree and much, much longer to finish making the piano. Nearly his entire life was put into this thing. I, however, have no use for it. It has been passed down in my family many times over. I have no wish to continue the tradition, and the piano is currently taking too much space in my home. I want it gone as quickly as possible. You can reach me by phone at the number listed below. Margaret. Reading the ad sparked my curiosity. One of a kind? Redwood tree? How strange and absurd! I had to see this thing. If it was half as remarkable as Margaret's description, then it was a must-have for my ever-growing collection. As such, I decided to give her a call. Margaret answered the phone after the first ring and immediately asked, Is this about the piano? She was thrilled to hear I was interested. I too was thrilled, happy to know it was still available. We set up a time the next day for me to come over and take a look at it. I hung up the phone, excited as I could be. I had a feeling this piano would become the new masterpiece of my collection. Being a musician, I own countless instruments, too many to list. Each time I acquired a new item, my heart would race with excitement. The piano was no different. I couldn't wait to see it in person. I woke up the following day with no resistance to my alarm, starting my daily routine in an effort to minimize the time between me and Margaret. She said she was an early bird and that I could swing by early. With that in mind, I showered, brushed my teeth, and got dressed at a record pace. I made it out the door roughly 25 minutes after getting out of bed. It might sound silly to be so worked up over a material object, but to that I'd say, you must not be a collector. Seeing this piano in person was my mission, and it was one I intended to see through the end. I found myself at Margaret's home within an hour. It was a small cottage at a dead end road, surrounded by a forest. There was an old tire swing in the backyard, indicating that it may have been where Margaret grew up. I wonder if her parents passed away and left her the house. Maybe the piano reminded her of them, and that was the real reason why she was getting rid of it. My speculation was interrupted by a woman racing out of the cottage to greet me. She signaled for me to come inside and went back in herself. This was with no doubt Margaret. I hadn't introduced myself in any way, but it wasn't likely that she received many visitors, and that's most likely because of where she lives. Eager to see the piano, I quickly jumped out of my car and made my way up to the stone walkway to the front door. Entering the house, Margaret seemed overjoyed to see me. It was overwhelming, but made things a little less awkward. She rushed me over to the room with the piano. She was so excited to show it to me, just as I was excited to see it. I matched her pace as we made our way up there. Upon entering, I stopped dead in my tracks. It was a beautiful concoction of wood and ivory, the likes of which I've never seen before. It had such a striking red color with a bold finish, and the design was mind-blowing. Simple, yet elegant. Highly original, and certainly one of a kind like Margaret stated in her ad. I stood there for a moment. Margaret mistook my reaction for disinterest, quickly going off on a sales pitch about its charm and history and so on. She then sat down at its stool and placed her hands over the keys. I tuned it yesterday after your call. Let's hear how it sounds. Margaret played a beautiful piece. In addition to playing, she also sang. This is when I took my attention away from the piano and allowed myself to notice her. She was young, maybe in her 20s. Her singing voice, accompanied by the wonderfully rich tone of the piano, has totally captivated me in a way that I can't put into words. I allowed myself to be taken by the song until she finished. Before I could compliment her, Margaret continued her well-rehearsed sales pitch. I don't know if it was her playing or her voice, but I was sold the minute she touched the keys. Because of this, I interrupted her. I'll take it. She was astounded when I said this. Really? You will? Wonderful. We were both happy and everything seemed fine, but one fact kept creeping and crawling at the back of my mind. The history of each piece in my collection is very important to me, and the piano had gaps that needed to